Imagine biting into your favorite Subway tuna sandwich, only to find out there might not be any tuna in it. Sounds unbelievable, right? Two women in California are making waves with a lawsuit against Subway, claiming the sandwich giant's tuna doesn't actually contain any tuna at all. If you've ever grabbed a quick sandwich from Subway without a second thought, you might want to rethink your order, because some shocking revelations about their ingredients have come to light. Subway's bread has been in some serious hot water, and not just because it's baked fresh daily. In 2020, Ireland's Supreme Court dropped a bombshell ruling: Subway's bread wasn't legally bread, but because it contained 5 times more sugar than the country allows for bread products. Each footlong had around 50 grams of sugar, more than some desserts. And if the sugar overload wasn't enough, let's talk about azotocarbonamide, a mouthful of a word that's probably harder to digest than the bread itself. This industrial chemical, used to make bread fluffier, also happens to be found in yoga mats. Yep, for years, people unknowingly bit into the same ingredient that keeps athletic equipment flexible. Subway defended its use for months before finally removing it, but never quite explained why their bread needed to be as bendy as a foam roller. You know that distinct Subway aroma? The one that hits you before you even see the store? Turns out, it's not coming from fresh bread baking in the back. It's engineered. Subway pumps a carefully crafted scent through its ventilation system to trick your brain into craving a sandwich before you even walk through the door. And while the smell might scream artisanal baking, the reality is far less romantic. Subway stores receive pre-mixed, pre-shaped dough sticks loaded with preservatives and conditioners. These are simply warmed up in-store, meaning every fresh-baked loaf is actually just a glorified heat-and-serve product. And for those thinking their 9-grain wheat bread is the healthy choice, food scientists have found it contains more sugar than many candy bars. So that's sweet onion chicken teriyaki? It might be sweeter than you think. Now, let's get to the real jaw-dropper, Subway's tuna. In 2021, lab tests made a shocking discovery: scientists couldn't detect any tuna DNA in Subway's tuna sandwiches. Not a single trace. Subway defended itself, claiming that the DNA might have been denatured during cooking. While that's technically possible, it still left customers scratching their heads. If there's no detectable tuna, then what exactly are people eating? But the tuna saga isn't the only meat mystery at Subway. A DNA analysis of their chicken revealed something that ruffled a lot of feathers, literally. Tests showed that Subway's chicken strips contained only about 50% actual chicken. The rest? Mostly soy protein, preservatives, and additives. Subway stood by its poultry, saying it was 100% chicken, just with a little extra stuff mixed in. But that uniform taste across all their meats? It's not by accident. Every type of meat at Subway arrives pre-cooked, pre-seasoned, and sealed with a special blend of preservatives and flavor enhancers, giving everything that same factory-made consistency. And this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Subway's menu surprises. Stay tuned, because the deeper you dig, the more bizarre it gets. Subway's commitment to consistency ensures that a turkey sub in Texas tastes exactly like one in Tennessee. But have you ever noticed that their ham, turkey, and chicken all seem to have a strangely similar flavor? That's not a coincidence. It's the result of heavy processing. It's not just the taste that's standardized. The uniform shape of Subway's meats is no accident either. Those perfectly round chicken patties? They don't exactly resemble anything found in nature. That's because Subway uses high-pressure processing and industrial molds to shape their meat into precise, identical portions. In fact, food scientists have a special term for what's happening here: restructured meat products. That's a fancy way of saying the meat has been broken down, processed, and then pieced back together into a new form. And if you thought you were getting a single source of meat in your cold-cut combo, think again. Industry reports show that just one serving can contain meat from multiple suppliers, processed in different facilities, and combined into a single product. The bologna alone can have meat from up to 7 different processing plants. This extensive processing chain helps Subway keep prices low, but it also means your sandwich has probably traveled further than you have. To maintain the same look, taste, and texture in every location, Subway's meat suppliers must follow an exhaustive manual of specifications. But that consistency comes at a price. Food critics have even coined a term for the signature taste found in all Subway sandwiches: the Subway flavor. However, the meat controversy was just one of the many headaches Subway had to deal with. As more customers started questioning what was actually in their food, they uncovered yet another issue, one that had nothing to do with ingredients. In 2013, an Australian customer took a ruler to his Subway footlong and made a shocking discovery. It wasn't 12 inches long, it was only 11 inches. Before you could say, "Where's my missing inch?" the internet exploded. Customers around the world began measuring their subs, posting photos of their undersized sandwiches, and calling out Subway for false advertising. The legal battle that followed revealed some surprising details about Subway's bread-making process. It turns out, the company has incredibly strict guidelines to control the weight, shape, and baking time of its bread, almost like a science experiment. But even with all these regulations, slight inconsistencies during baking meant that not every sandwich made the cut. But this wasn't just a minor mix-up. Customers felt cheated, and Subway was forced to address the issue. Eventually, they promised to ensure that every footlong would actually be a foot long. And just when Subway thought they had dodged enough controversy, another issue was bubbling beneath the surface, one that would call into question the very foundation of their brand. Subway's obsession with consistency somehow managed to produce sandwiches that would make a ruler cry. A nationwide survey conducted during the infamous footlong lawsuit found that nearly 80% of tested sandwiches were shorter than 12 inches, some barely stretching past 11 inches. Talk about a diet sandwich. When customers called out the shrinking subs, Subway's response was a masterpiece of corporate creativity. They claimed that footlong was just a trademark, a marketing term that didn't actually promise a 12-inch sandwich. By that logic, their fresh vegetables could be last week's leftovers, and their Italian herbs could be from a random garden in Cleveland. This defense went over about as well as a meatball sub on a first date. The lawsuit forced Subway to implement new quality control measures, including requiring franchises to use measuring tools, because apparently, about this long wasn't cutting it anymore. However, even after all the controversy, Subway still refused to guarantee that every sandwich would be exactly 12 inches, claiming that bread can shrink or expand during baking. The court allowed for size variations of up to half an inch, a margin of error that would make any carpenter reconsider their career choices. In the end, the lawsuit cost Subway a whopping $520,000 in legal fees and forced them to add disclaimers about sandwich sizes on their menus. They spent months revising marketing materials, basically clarifying that a footlong was approximately a foot long, which is like telling your teacher your homework is approximately finished. To top it off, they even updated their training manuals with specific instructions on bread measuring and sandwich assembly, likely creating the world's most detailed guide to putting stuff between two slices of bread. But incorrect sandwich sizes were just the tip of the corporate iceberg. Behind the scenes, Subway's franchise system turned out to be even tougher to digest than their bread. For anyone dreaming of owning a Subway store, the price of admission is steep. Franchise fees range anywhere from $15,000 to $300,000 just to open a single location. But that's just the appetizer in this very expensive sandwich. The real meat of the problem lies in Subway's franchise agreements. Store owners must follow a thick manual of rules, think thicker than a foot-long stack of cheese slices. They're also required to buy supplies exclusively from Subway-approved vendors, often at prices higher than what they could get locally. One franchise owner calculated that they were paying 50% more for tomatoes than they would at the nearest grocery store. And these weren't even magic tomatoes. This financial squeeze creates a domino effect. To stay profitable, many franchise owners cut corners faster than they slice cucumbers. Employee wages stay low, training gets rushed, and maintenance is often postponed until something actually breaks, or worse, until a health inspector shows up. Statistics reveal that the average Subway franchise makes only about $31,000 in profit per year. That's barely enough to cover a year of college tuition, let alone run a business. And who suffers the most? Employees. Many Subway workers report being the only person on shift, juggling everything from making sandwiches to cleaning, to running the cash register, basically turning the term sandwich artist into a one-person circus act. The average hourly wage? Just above minimum wage. And with training often consisting of nothing more than watching a few outdated videos, it's no wonder some Subway locations have a higher turnover rate than their vegetables. Subway's approach to employee training seems to be based on the time-honored tradition of guesswork. One former worker reported that their entire food safety lesson consisted of a manager saying, "If it looks okay, it probably is." A philosophy like that would make any health inspector's hair stand on end. Another employee recalled learning how to portion toppings by watching coworkers eyeball it, leading to sandwiches that looked more like abstract art than lunch. And when it came to expiration dates? Well, some franchise owners got a little creative. Stories surfaced of workers being told to scrape off mold and use the good parts of vegetables. One owner even admitted to changing the labels on mayonnaise containers to extend their shelf life, because apparently mayo ages like fine wine. When corporate inspections were on the horizon, Subway locations turned into well-rehearsed Broadway productions. Employees shared stories of frantic cleaning sprees, expired products mysteriously disappearing, and everyone suddenly remembering proper food handling techniques, at least until the inspector left the parking lot. But no amount of last-minute scrubbing could hide the real issues. In just 2023, over 2,000 Subway locations received critical health code violations. That's more violations than they have veggie topping options. The most common offense? Temperature control issues. Some locations were treating their cold-cut meats more like science experiments than sandwiches. One Florida store kept its tuna salad at 72 degrees Fahrenheit, apparently trying to evolve it into a new life form. Cross-contamination was also a major problem. Some employees used the same gloves to handle food and cash because, nothing enhances flavor quite like bacteria from a $5 bill. At one Ohio store, the same cutting board was used for raw chicken and vegetables, giving customers an unexpected game of food poisoning roulette. And then there was the vegetable washing situation, which could send a clean freak straight into therapy. Several stores were caught barely rinsing their vegetables, if at all. One health inspector found visible dirt on Subway's lettuce, giving Eat Fresh a whole new meaning. Another location stored tomatoes in a container that had previously held cleaning supplies, because apparently they were trying to wash them from the inside out. Mold was another recurring guest in Subway kitchens. Inspectors discovered it growing in ice machines, on walls, and behind the sandwich counter. Walk-in coolers often looked more like science projects gone wrong, with vegetables decomposing faster than a teenager's bedroom organization skills. And if mold wasn't enough to make your appetite vanish, the pest problems might. Dozens of stores were cited for mouse droppings near food storage areas. A location in Texas had to shut down after cockroaches were spotted mid-lunch break in the sandwich prep station. And in one store, ants were found inside the sugar container, apparently unimpressed with Subway's artificial sweeteners. Basic equipment maintenance also took a back seat to saving money. Broken thermometers, malfunctioning refrigerators, and cutting boards with more scratches than a cat lady's furniture were just the beginning. One inspector reported finding so much old food buildup inside a meat slicer that it was practically making its own sandwich. Hand-washing procedures were another creative cost-cutting casualty. Some stores replaced soap with water in dispensers, while others simply blocked hand-washing stations with stacks of expired bread, because, apparently, throwing it out was too much work. But Subway's health violations were just one part of a much bigger problem. While customers were growing more skeptical of what was happening behind the counter, an even bigger crisis was unfolding, one that would shake the entire franchise to its core. Subway's expansion strategy over the years has read like a fast food gold rush, stuffing locations into every available nook and cranny across America, sometimes just blocks apart. Since 2015, over 5,000 locations have permanently closed, more than some fast food chains even have in total. And 2023? Another 700 stores flipped their "open" signs to "goodbye forever," packed up their cookie displays, and shut their doors. The root of the problem? Subway's everywhere and anywhere approach to growth. They crammed stores into every available strip mall, gas station, and even converted phone booths. Yes, really. One town in Pennsylvania ended up with 6 Subway locations within a 2-mile radius, because apparently there's no such thing as too many sandwiches. But as stores kept multiplying, profits didn't. And what happened next would expose the cracks in Subway's empire, one sub at a time.